Freidenberg, and I am a senior associate at MacDonald Hogan Bayless, located in Seattle, Washington. I have been practicing civil rights litigation for the past 7 years. I worked in San Diego, California, and also Los Angeles, California, before I returned back to my hometown here in Seattle. My main practice area in civil rights litigation is law enforcement misconduct, which is also known as police brutality. A large percentage of my cases involve wrongful death cases, meaning something that a law enforcement officer has done, like a shooting, or something that a law enforcement officer may have not done, like an in-custody death involving someone who has died in jail. So I chose to work in the civil rights litigation field, number one, recognizing that it is a huge privilege and honor to be able to hold a license to practice law. I am a biracial woman. I am Chinese American, and so I have a lot of lived experiences and family history that led me on the path to social justice work. Something that kickstarted my interest and passion in the civil rights litigation field specifically was some of my undergraduate studies and politics that led me to civil rights litigation for law school purposes and then postgraduate. There are many different reasons why we contacted the Autopsy Initiative. Law enforcement related deaths are a tragedy. Families and communities are torn apart by state-sponsored violence. Planning a loved one's celebration of life or a funeral, these logistics are overwhelming. Families should not have to think about potential liability, the preservation of evidence, or any of these legal issues that we as attorneys have to think about in wrongful death cases. One of the factors that compounds this difficulty is not being able to answer family members' questions that seem to be relatively simple, like what happened, who was involved, why did my loved one pass away? For attorneys, we want to be able to provide support to families as we navigate through this complex legal process and get answers to those questions as quickly as possible. Medical examiner reports and toxicology reports provide so much information to us at a very early stage in our legal evaluation. For example, in a wrongful death shooting case, when you have an autopsy that's performed, you are going to look at the entry wounds, the exit wounds. All of those things provide us with information as to the trajectory of the bullets. Ultimately, this culminates into having the cause of death and the manner of death. For all of these different reasons, this is why we chose to reach out to the Autopsy Initiative. In the legal field, as plaintiff side attorneys, we have the burden of proof to show that a constitutional violation caused that person's death. The pathologist's report will say the cause and manner of death. This can be one of the most hotly contested issues in civil rights litigation, is how that person died. So getting all of this information from the pathologist report, number one, provides answers to the families who have been asking these questions since they lost their loved one. But number two, allows us as the legal practitioners to start creating the framework and how we're going to potentially litigate this case. There is huge value in having a second private autopsy performed. During an ongoing investigation into a law enforcement related death, sometimes there is a task force of different neighboring law enforcement agencies that will investigate what happened. The medical examiner's office usually sits within that county where the incident occurred, or even where these other affiliated law enforcement agencies are located. So there is no true independence, although it looks at first blush to be impartial because it's an independent task force. True impartiality comes from a neutral third party, and that is exactly what the initiative provides. During this time when we are evaluating a case, so this is pre-litigation, and we are trying to determine if there is a civil rights case, we as the attorneys might be hesitant to front that cost for a private second autopsy because it can be thousands and thousands of dollars. Again, this is exactly what the Autopsy Initiative provides. It provides an affordable private second autopsy where we get quick results so that we can understand what happened to that person. And it serves as a check and balance on the county medical examiner's office that typically does not have a second set of eyes on the work that it produces. And as we all know, having that accountability is a bedrock of our civil rights. The provisional findings will tell us the cause of death, the manner of death. It notes evidence of each and every injury on the decedent's body. The toxicology report is also sent out, so we're going to be able to understand if that person may have been using drugs, may have been under the influence of alcohol. All of these things factor into our assessment of the case, but most importantly is able to provide families with answers. Cost and availability are two main issues that we frequently run into when we're trying to obtain a second private autopsy. Another issue is neutrality. If we decide to pay for a second private autopsy, it is possible that the other side, meaning defense counsel, could exploit the fact that we paid for a result if there's a different finding between the medical examiner's office and then the privately retained pathologist. They can say, well, you paid for this person to do a second autopsy, and that's the reason why they found inconsistencies with this first report. So having a neutral third party like the Autopsy Initiative allows us to circumvent that potential issue. Unfortunately, it is very, very common to have to wait many months before we are able to receive a medical examiner's report. It's difficult to get somebody on the phone who is authorized to speak with us, who actually has knowledge about the progress of the investigation or on the report. Being able to speak directly to the pathologist that worked with the Autopsy Initiative before we even have to file a lawsuit, and only weeks after we contacted the Autopsy Initiative, was something unfathomable to me as a civil rights practitioner. The pathologist was able to break down the findings in lay people terms so that the medical jargon made sense, and was able to present the findings in a neutral, fact-forward way. The second private autopsy would not have been possible for my clients. The only way we would have been able to have a second private autopsy was through the initiative, and we are so extremely grateful for this service. Autopsy Initiative staff are excellent. I think one of the most important things in our practice is to surround ourselves with empathetic people who understand trauma-centered communications. And the Autopsy Initiative staff was constantly supportive, providing updates so that we and the family knew exactly what to expect in a time of extreme uncertainty, was very well organized, and provided support that the family truly needed in that moment. I am so grateful to be able to provide more comprehensive support to my clients and to be able to answer questions during one of the hardest moments in their lives. The Autopsy Initiative provides stability and answers and support in ways that was wholly absent in our field before. The Autopsy Initiative fills a hole in our justice system and provides more holistic justice options to family members. It was an honor to work with the Autopsy Initiative staff. My clients were so grateful for the support and excellent communication of the Autopsy Initiative staff. The initiative staff and the pathologists were able to timely complete the autopsy and safely return my client's body back to his family here in Washington. Importantly, the provisional findings from the initiative were provided to us 3 weeks after we initially contacted the initiative. The medical examiner's report was provided to us 3.5 months after we received the report from the initiative. We just cannot express our gratitude to the initiative for getting it done in that timely way.